Okay, so now we're gonna actually start painting. Before you get painting, you should start thinking about what kind of brushes you're gonna want. You're gonna at least want one like really thin brush, or like a thin tip, and one that has a wider edge on it. The wider edge would be good for like the bigger areas, like on the face. This part will be good for like going around the eyes, getting any little details like around like the lips, any like those close like little features. You need to get a little more detail. Okay, so you at least want to probably have like 2 brushes. You can have more if you need to. When you get to even the background, you could have even a bigger brush, but I'm not going to worry about that for right now. Okay, so I already have mapped out my value shapes. So now I'm just going to start laying down some of the actual paint. Okay, so I'm just going to take some of this, and yeah, and again, just kind of like how you started with the value shapes, it might be easiest just to start where you already have like the lightest areas and the darkest areas. And you don't have to worry about exactly making like actual shapes like how I outlined things here. You can make it a little bit more organic and just kind of and more painterly. But if you want to kind of keep it more hard edges like that, it could be kind of interesting. I've seen other students do that and it works well. So it's really just as long as you're seeing and following along with the value, it will work out. Okay, so I just rather paint like little spots, and you can always add more than having these like huge big like brush strokes and you're covering up a lot of value. So always, if you're not sure, kind of start small. I'm going to start adding just a little bit of the where it's like number 2, where it's just a little bit of color and a lot of white to make a nice light tint. So because like on the top of his cheeks here, I'm going to start adding that in. And then once you go through here and you know you don't like how something's looking, and the nice thing about paint is you can always paint over it. I'm saying, and acrylic doesn't take that long to dry, so I like working with acrylic the best. It's more forgiving. Okay, so I'm just kind of following here because like I have 2 here, so this is like that really light tint. Okay, on the top of his nose. Okay, a little bit on the side of his nose here. Now, when you're doing this, I know people have a tendency to want to just kind of like make this line here, but you don't see a line around the nose. Okay, it's really just about all these like little shapes, all these shadows that are start indicating that there's the edge of the nose. Okay, so there should be no hard line right here. There is more of a defined area down on the bottom of his nose. Okay, but not on the sides, because that's going to make it look a little, it's not going to look right. Okay, so I'm just kind of adding that in. So it's really, really light here on the top. Okay, so I'm going to here. Now where these kind of converge here, you don't want it to look like the nose disappears. So that's why I kind of put 2 to 3 right here, and I said before I might have to pump up the value a little bit because right here it is a little harder to see the edge of his nose. So I am going to have to add just a touch more color just to make this a little bit darker. So you start seeing that there's a little bit edge of a nose, but it's not going to be a huge difference. It's just going to make this a little bit darker, but not much. Okay, and kind of comes through here and a little bit around between like where the nostrils here, there's a little bit there. It gets a little darker, like on the bottom of the tip of his nose, like right here. Okay, make this a little bit bigger so you can kind of see just a little bit easier. Maybe like that. Okay, just trying so you can see a little easier. Okay. So like when it gets closer to like this, like the top of his cheek, and then it had like this cheekbones here, it's gonna be like just a little bit darker. But kind of think about, you're not really jumping from one value shape to the next like really rapidly, unless it really does have a more dynamic lighting than this one. This one is more very soft lighting. on this picture. Except right where it is, his cheekbones is probably, and right under his nose, it's like probably the biggest difference in value where it changes suddenly. Okay, so I'm kind of getting the top here. So I'm not like blobbing it on, I'm just doing it nice and just nice and easy, just kind of just adding just enough there just to change into the paint. Okay, it kind of gives a softer look. All right, so right here, I want to show you how the with value changes. So I said that was a 4 before. I'm going to show you what that looks like as I'm kind of adding this in. Now, I know I didn't talk much about adding like the grays, because I was just kind of wanting you just to kind of start seeing some of the shapes, and I didn't want to make it too complicated. But right here, how it's like I'm getting a little darker, but it doesn't look quite right. This is where I'm going to want to add the tone, which is when you're adding the color plus gray. So that's where I'm going to want to put it, whereas sometimes where, you know, it's not dark, okay, so the difference between like, you know, you don't want it like it's dark, but you just kind of want to mute the color a little bit, okay, that's where this is going to come into play. So I kind of want more of like, I don't know, maybe more like that. I just want like a little, I just want to tone it down a little bit more because this doesn't really match what's right here. So I just need to mute the color, is what happened. Just a touch more black. A little bit more color. So sometimes you have to go back and forth and grab a little bit of color, a little bit black, a little bit white. You know, so it's better if you just mix up a little bit at a time. So that way you're not wasting a lot of paint on something you end up not even using. Okay, so there we go. That's getting like the little bit that you're toning down where the edge of that cheekbone is. I know, and then I have like a basically a stock image or whatever, so I have all this writing on it, but it doesn't matter because you're going to cover it up anyways. I'm the only one who has this problem. Okay, so like over here. So if you know you're that same value as in other places, that's why it's a nice way to map it out. That way, if you already have that paint on your brush, you can put it in other places too that, you know, it looks like it's will work out where you want it to go. And sometimes when you start laying down the value, you realize, oh, that's not actually the right value I need for it. It, you know, doesn't look right. And that's when you can, you know, you can adjust. I told you this part wasn't scientific. It's a way just to kind of just start seeing what value, you're kind of guessing what kind of value you want to put to kind of just get you started. But it's not like you're locked into that. It's just as a guide, okay? So like I don't want to lose this lighter value, okay? So I'm gonna make sure this is not all 4. It kind of starts going down more this way. And here, and that's kind of where it starts to end. And then we'll have a 3 here, but I'm gonna kind of just put this here where I have my brush, because it is a little darker here. So anywhere I kind of see where it's just a little bit more gray, I'm just going to go ahead and just start kind of putting that in there. Okay, whatever just kind of left on my brush. So if you kind of just have just a little bit of paint left on your brush, you can just kind of start putting down just a little bit of paint, and that way you can kind of just start kind of building up the value too, instead of always just about laying it down. So you can start seeing it's starting to come together a little bit more. So let's start doing, like you can do underneath the chin here, so you can kind of start seeing where the values are going to get even darker. And I have it as like a 7, so it is going to be a little bit much more darker here. So again, you just want to take a little bit of paint and just swirl it off the side. And then when you put it down, you know, you can adjust. You know, it's like, is that too much, not enough? I kind of like that. It's dark, but I don't want it to be like, I don't want it to go it still should like this is part of his face still, you know, like this is, I don't want to feel like it's completely separate from his, you know, goes from his head to his neck and it looks like completely different, even though there is a very dynamic shadow underneath. Okay, and then it does kind of start getting lighter, and I put that as like a 6, so I can start adding a little bit of white to this as I start moving over this way. just a little bit of white here. I feel like I had too much. This one has to go back and forth. Now I feel like it took out too much of the color. So it's, you know, you have to play around with it and take it how you want it to look. Okay, like that. Okay, and then for the last thing I want to go over real quick, I'm not going to finish this whole thing, but I just want to talk about the eyes, just because those kind of get painted over really quickly, and the eyes can kind of make or break how the painting looks. So I just want to go over that real quick. So remember I talked about having the thin paintbrush, so I'm going to switch to that. Now, yeah, there's a little glint there. So again, like I talked about before, you don't want to lose that because that's going to make it the painting feel a little bit more alive. This one I did in a different color, and I kept that little glint there, and it really makes a difference because without that, they kind of look like they have dead eyes, and it doesn't look as good. So this is pretty dark, so I might actually just go ahead and just make it black. So again, using the really small brush, kind of staying within the lines because you don't want to make the pupils too big. You want to stay right where they are. And I can't really see the iris, so I'm just kind of making this all black. And the white of the eyes I know aren't exactly white on this one, so I can have it as like a 2 or 3, but I'm muted. So I'm making sure to go around that little glint so I don't lose it. And then I'm going to go ahead and do like the whites of the eyes, but I think I'm going to do it where it's a tone where I'm making a little bit of gray because his eyes are a little bit in the shadow. I feel like it's a little, no, it's a little too gray. So sometimes you don't get it where you want to. I just kind of keep pulling the color. I keep pulling the color out. So I started here and I keep lightening it up as I move up. Okay, so maybe like between here. And if you're not sure, sometimes you just gotta put it in there and try it. So yeah, using a little brush will be really helpful for this part. Okay, getting those little details around the eyes. And even around like the nose, the mouth, you're all gonna wanna use a small brush for that. And even like the eyelid, don't lose that. You know, you're gonna wanna make sure you still, you know, keep it as you go around. The hair is gonna come down over it a little bit here. But I'm just going to outline it just a little bit since he does have really defined eyes. Okay, and now that it's kind of dry a little bit more, now I can go back and actually put the glint in. So I'm just going to clean off my brush real quick, and I want to go ahead and put that glint back in. Okay. So, and you know, as you go through it, this is still a little wet there. You can always adjust it. If sometimes you make that glint a little too big, you can let it dry and kind of paint in around it again. Okay, so you're just going to keep going with this.